Welcome to the Fergus Falls Business Spotlight Podcast, the show that takes a deep dive into local businesses and the individuals that run our community. To guide you along the way, here's your host, Jacob Bittner.
Oh, welcome into another episode. Man, I'm excited for this one. This is I've just done like little snippets of kind of talking about my life. The last couple months have been kind of wild, running through the city council thing and running for city council. I didn't get elected to city council
this time.
I didn't get elected to city council, and I couldn't tell you how good I feel about that. The process was awesome. I feel great that I can address it now on the show, talk to people a little bit about it. The show's back on 12:50 a.m., which I'm excited for. So, all in all, it was a really, really good experience. This is a perfect episode to do kind of coming out of it. I can maybe reflect a little bit on public service as a whole, but this is your whole website here. So I'm here with Miranda Lape, who started this fergusfallsboards.com. fergusfallsboards.com. There it is, all about board openings. So, Miranda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jacob. Excited to be here. And let me say, I'm really proud of you for taking the plunge and running for office. That's awesome. Even if it didn't pan out, well, maybe it's a little bit of relief that it didn't quite pan out the way you wanted it, but still.
I think we're doing what we need to be doing here. I think I'm on the path that I need to be on. I think the city ended up with the representation that it has and hopefully is the representation that it needs. I really, all along, I haven't had anything bad to say about my opponent, and I certainly never wanted politics to get kind of tied into this show. I've got sponsors here, Atlas Outdoor Services. We're going to talk about the beer of the week, Stumbino's, Victor Lundin's, Fergus Home and Hardware, Liberty Business Systems, Wayne Schuett, Century 21 Atwood, all these people that support the show. I'm not like trying to push my personal narratives on this show. This platform is, in the process of some news for the show. We're going to be rebranding to the Fergus Spotlight. So cool. Kind of still keeping a business theme, Fergus Falls Business Spotlight to Fergus Spotlight. Probably be a lot of business interviews, but I just kind of want to be able to cast that wide net. Talk politics if I want to talk politics a little bit without upsetting any of my sponsors. But, just like it's good to have conversations about stuff. And one thing I'm really grateful for is the opportunity to do that little Civic Spotlight mini series I did, interview with a few candidates. And it was a really, really good process to go through for just being educated, getting involved in the community. So we're going to talk about all different ways, whether you're volunteering to run for office, a public service, or getting involved in a commission within the city, a board of directors, Greater Fergus Falls, the chamber, Visit Fergus Falls, all of these nonprofit organizations that exist within our community, they need people to advise them and to make them run. So Miranda's going to talk about that and how you can get involved. But first, let's hear about your story.
Yeah.
Well, where did you start? Are you from Fergus?
I am, yeah. So my maiden name is Hubert, and I grew up here. We moved to the area when I was about 5 years old, coming up from the cities area. And my parents really got me interested in being involved at a really young age, going out into the community, getting involved in politics to a degree. I remember going out door knocking with my mom as a kid. But I think my first real taste of seeing how one person or a group of people can make a difference in the community was back. I don't even remember the year. I'll say, let's call it 2005, 2005 thereabouts. Do you remember, you're from Fergus too,
Yep,
right,
yep.
Jacob? Yeah. Do you remember the park that was across from the library that's now Magnuson Park and used to be NP Park?
Yes.
When we first moved to town, it had like really old, janky equipment. And sometime in that like 2005 era, Home Depot decided to work with a national level group that came into communities and designed parks for kids. So our local Home Depot got involved with this. They brought in this outside group that helped design parks, and the Home Depot employees were invited to bring their kids to like this special like task force, right? So they got us all together at the library. My dad was working for Home Depot at the time. And me and a bunch of other kids, they handed us crayons and paper and said, okay, go for it. Design your dream park. And that was then the first time that I had been asked for, I think, my opinion as like a 6-7-year-old. And we were kids, right? We went wild. Some people were like, oh, I want it to be a music park, or like, oh, let's have dinosaur bones. Or I was like, oh, let's get a telescope. That would be really cool. And this group took all those ideas and went away with them and then designed a park that incorporated elements that all of us kids had designed. So that equipment was the most recent equipment to be removed. Now we've got that awesome accessible park.
Okay.
But the orange and white park that was there before had a telescope, had musical elements, had some like bone elements.
Yeah.
All of that had come from that group of kids that they got together at the library back in the day. And that was something almost magical for little me. Like the idea that I could have a voice in my community, that something I was asked to input on could be brought to reality. I can't tell you how cool it was at the unveiling of that park to go up on the equipment and see the telescope that I had specifically said, hey, we should have this at our park. So in a roundabout way,
How old were you?
I must have been like 6 or 7.
Okay.
Like pretty young, but that was it for me. I knew I wanted to do something that would like have tangible impacts on my community. So that got the ball rolling. I went off to school and such. I moved away and said I'd never come back.
What year did you graduate, Fergus?
2015.
2015?
Yep.
And where'd you go to college?
I did my undergrad at Brigham Young University down in Utah, and then my master's through Grand Canyon University.
BYU.
Yep.
Nice.
After I graduated from M State, I should say, too.
Okay.
I did the PSCO program.
And you got a degree that encompasses your passions?
My master's is, I have a master's in public administration with an emphasis in nonprofit management.
Okay. And I met you, I was introduced to you. The first time I met you, I went through the grant process with LRAC. Mm-hmm. You were their grant coordinator?
Yes, grants manager at Lake Region Arts Council. And that was the job that kind of brought me back to the area, and was just so much fun. I had so much fun at that position. There's nothing better than being able to say, hey, we have money. Do you want it?
Right. Well, I didn't get it. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I didn't get a grant for the pot. Those were like
That time.
That time.
Yes.
That's this is, I can't tell you how many like circle moments though have happened in the show. And like when I was applied for that grant, I had one little microphone sitting on my coffee table, and me and my guests at the time would, huddle around and lean into the little microphone and have our conversation. And so it's, I didn't end up getting a grant. I ended up, buying some equipment myself, and now I'm here, obviously getting supply, with some equipment from the radio station, which, it's cool how life goes full circle, and grants aren't the way, for everything. Apparently, I was told that I wasn't quite an art enough to get an art grant.
There was quite the debate on that too. But for the record, I was on your side. But.
So fill in between LRAC. Obviously, that was your big that was your last job. You can talk about your current position a little bit, but we're going to talk about more about your website.
Right. Yeah.
But from college to LRAC, how did that go? And like anything that stands out from college, getting your master's, life experiences from BYU That must have been an interesting campus to be a part of.
Yeah, it really was. And this was pre-COVID for most of that. So it was honestly a fairly different environment than I think it might be today, in some respects. But I think the big thing was actually the minor program I did there, which was a civic engagement leadership program. And at the time, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my life still. And it was coming up on my senior year, and I was graduating. My major for my undergrad was Latin American Studies. So I was thinking maybe I'd do something with that, maybe work part-time, maybe see what would happen, have my kids and stuff. And but I was going through this minor program at the same time and doing community projects and learning how nonprofit and non-governmental organizations really like wrap into the structure of how we do like almost anything that isn't making money in the U.S. is nonprofit and non-governmental organization work. And but I was also really into politics too at the time. So I was looking at maybe doing a master's in political science, and someone said to me, "No, you should really go for public administration." And I said, "I don't even know what that is." But did a little bit of research, and next thing I knew, I was enrolled in the master's program, and then looking for a nonprofit here in town to come back to, and found the grants manager opening at LRAC, and I guess the rest is kind of history. And that brings me to my recent transition, which I have left LRAC now to go work at another arts council, one of the 11 regional arts councils that Minnesota has to be able to distribute the legacy funding.
Okay, it's very similar field, because is that legacy funding go to LRAC?
Yes.
So you're still working with that same.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Interesting.
Just for a different region. So like LRAC serves the same 9 counties that West Central Initiative does. It's our region 4 here in this area. And I've gone just next door to Region 5 to be their executive director.
Is that I don't want to get into a political thing.
Yeah, no.
But is the Arts Council, arts grants, I mean, that is politically very much so a more liberal movement.
And the Legacy Amendment is interesting that way, because when it got passed back in 2008, 2009, the full kind of part of it is the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment. So all of the money from that funding, some of it goes to the arts, but a really big chunk of it also then goes to keeping our trails nice and water clean and land conservation. So they always tell the story. I wasn't around for it, but I should say I wasn't old enough to vote for it at the time. But the fishermen and outdoorsmen teamed up with the artists to get that passed.
Huh.
So it was kind of a unlikely bedfellows kind of.
Like a conservation, like a wildlife conservation and arts funding. So this legacy, what'd you call it? It's
the Legacy Amendment.
The Legacy Amendment. Is that a Minnesota state amendment then?
Yes. Yep. A state amendment to our Constitution. And it'll actually be up for election again sometime in the next 4 to 8 years, because it was a 25-year thing. So when they passed it back in, I think it was the 2008 election, and then went into effect in 2009. So the 25 years after that is the amount of time that this amendment diverts some of that. Or what it did was add a slight increase to the sales tax in Minnesota.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
And then of that, it's portioned out for those kind of 4 categories.
So it comes from the sales tax, and then what? This is going to be. I didn't even know what questions I was going to ask, but I love this. What percentage of the dollar? Let's say I get taxed. Let's say $1 of my tax money, I pay $1 in sales tax towards this legacy fund. What percentage of that is going to actually get distributed back to an artist, and how much of it gets absorbed by the government's operations?
Yeah, good question. So I'm
and if you don't know the answer, just say like, I'm not sure. That's okay.
No,
you're
you're good. I'm looking it up on my phone right now. So the Legacy Amendment increased the state's sale tax by 3/8% for 25 years. So it's a little teeny tiny itty bitty portion.
Just a little tax. Just a little tax. Don't be so scared. It's just a little tax, people.
Just a little bit. And then let's see. So for the 4 different funds, which that's the water, clean water for drinking water sources, protecting, enhancing, and restoring wetlands, prairies, forests, fish, game, and wildlife habitat, and then preserving arts and cultural heritage, etc. So 33% goes to clean water, 33% goes to the Outdoor Heritage Fund, 19.75% goes to arts and cultural heritage, and 14.25% to the Parks and Trail Fund. So of that you're paying, more of it actually goes to clean water and outdoor heritage than it does for the arts.
Okay.
And that's a lot of, and so that whole collected pool then, and not to turn this back then into an arts thing, but I'm in the arts, so that so that's where we're at. But before we circle back to the boards, I'll just say that pool of money then gets distributed, and this is the kind of the really awesome thing about that Arts Council system, because it's going for arts and humanities too, right? So some of it goes to museums, some of it goes to the libraries, some of it then goes to the arts organizations, some of it gets appropriated out to the 11 regional arts councils for our regions in particular. So, and I think that's just awesome, because it's really then distributing that lifeblood of arts funding throughout the state. So it's not just all being concentrated in the metro area.
That money, though, a certain percentage of that sales tax or whatever money comes into this must go towards operational expenses of all these programs as well, right? Because there's jobs involved there. There's a lot of, but there's also boards of directors involved there. And that's what we're going to talk about, because a lot of these nonprofits rely on good, strong, efficient boards so that they don't have to pay as much staff, so that they're able to redistribute the funds back to where they want to make an impact. So talk to me about kind of your, I guess, it was a pretty smooth transition. I can see the seamless transition there between your two positions with the legacy amendment thing. But talk to me about this FergusFallsBoards.com. By the way, great name, great branding here, FergusFallsBoards.com. Good. So I haven't been to this website yet, but talk to me about, when did it come to be? What sparked this?
Yeah. So West Central Initiative, big shout out to everything they do in our area too. As far as economic development and supporting nonprofits and growing businesses and such. One of the things that they have been doing is a rural democracy program, recognizing that we in these rural spaces are often hurting for people to serve in leadership roles, be it running for office or serving on boards or just getting involved in general. And where that kind of came about was a study that someone did. Let me find his name. Benjamin Winchester. And he's a rural sociologist with the University of Minnesota Extension Center for Community Vitality. And he did a big study on kind of what the needs are as far as public office, like these boards and commissions, et cetera. And he found that 1 in 14 adults in Otter Tail County must serve on a board or an elected office to keep the local nonprofits and local governments running at full capacity.
1 in 14?
1 in 14.
Dang.
And that's countywide. So kind of applying that same percentage just to the Fergus Falls population, we've got 14,119 residents at last count. That's about 815 Fergus Falls adults who would need to be involved in these types of organizations to keep them at 100% capacity.
Dang.
And I don't know about you, but I don't think I know 815 people who are currently volunteering.
No, that's a large number. That's
It is a pretty large number. Yeah.
And so that leads to more stress and harder work for the people that do choose to take on those positions.
It does. And you see a lot of the same wonderful people serving in multiple capacities and getting a little more burnt out every year.
Yep.
And frankly, we're also seeing kind of some age demographic differences
Right.
and such for
Yep.
that maybe passing the torch or just kind of
Yep.
lighting more fires.
I mean, the little bit I've witnessed is like, it's almost like I don't want to say people get forced in or coerced in to like being like the chair of this board, but it's like, oh yeah, we all voted. You weren't at the meeting. Somebody appointed you. It's your job to do it now. And it's like, I think that was Jan Workaw. That's how she ended up running the farmers market or something. I think that was the story she told. I can't quite remember, but it was somewhere along those lines that like she just kind of ended up doing it because nobody else was there to do it. And they said she should do it. And she wasn't there to say no.
Yep. And I think so. The West Central Initiative program did a rural advocacy and public leadership program, a cohort. They got about, I think there were 20 something of us together, and we did a 6-month program. And they asked us to pick a cause in the community that we cared about, pick a problem, and then take some of our time during that program to address it. And what I had heard from several other nonprofit leaders in the area was that everyone's hurting for board members and everyone's hurting to retain board members. And it's a conversation that keeps coming up over and over again. And I thought, well, what can we do? What could be done about this? So I can't even necessarily credit myself with this idea. I think someone else had mentioned it at one point in one of those meetings. But the idea of a centralized location for board openings to be gathered and presented. So something that both nonprofits could use as a way to recruit people and that the public can use as a way to find out what's even out there. I mean, I would say the bulk or majority of people don't even know what nonprofits we have in Fergus.
Right.
To what serving on a board even is or what that means. And
right.
3, what kind of commitment it is. Or what the qualifications are, anything of that. So I'm really trying to kind of bring that down to something super easily digestible and really take kind of the unknown factor out of it for the public because we need more people.
Yeah. So make it easier to connect the nonprofits and the board, the empty board seats to the people who could potentially fill them.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to get into here just a quick little overview. Hopefully I don't get too off the rabbit trail here, but about kind of the history of councils, the history of board of directors, and kind of how that modern nonprofit board of directors structure kind of came to be. So before we do that, I usually do the beer of the week at the beginning of the show, but we're going to do a little mid-show beer of the week segment. This you're not partaking in the beer of the week. That's okay. That's just fine. More for me. It is Friday afternoon. It is a great, great time to be enjoying this pickleball junkie here from Outstate Brewing. So, this pickleball junkie here joins the Uncommon Cream Ale series. There's the Common Cream obviously is their staple beer, one of the staple beers at Outstate, and they kind of made a bunch of spin-offs and variations. And this one is the Pickleball Junkie. It provides the perfect touch of kosher dill to Outstate's Common Cream Ale. So 4.9% ABV, 10 IBU, very, very crushable. If you like a little bit of hint of pickle in your beer, it's very, very good. So go check out that. Check out the whole Uncommon Cream Ale series at Outstate. I'll probably be reviewing a few more of these cream ales over the coming episodes. So, but let's get into this. I don't know what you know about the history of how all of this started. Did they get into that at all in your master's program?
Probably. It's if you hadn't asked, I'd have been able to.
Well, it goes back the earliest forms of governance advisory councils. We're talking 300 plus BC, looking back to the ancient Sumerians, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans. Councils of elders were appointed advising kings and rulers. And then you kind of had like the medieval guilds and charitable groups that arose in the like 12th to 15th centuries would have been maybe closer to a like volunteer board, or like we need a board to run this guild or this charitable group. But then
there's a round table at some point, right? Yeah.
The round table. Yeah, the round table probably started during the medieval times, or the town square. I know we talked about like that's how a lot of information came to be, was like the town square, or like people would literally, a messenger would stand and shout in the middle of a town hall or town square the information, or posted on an area. But yeah, that round table probably started in the medieval times. The IRS tax exemption for nonprofits came about in 1913. So the introduction of the U.S. income tax laws. Ooh, we won't get into the income tax laws. But 1913, a lot of bad stuff started happening. But one of the good things that came from it was tax exemption for nonprofits. They created this tax, and then they said, I guess we won't make the nonprofits pay it. So, and then obviously the standardization of all that stuff grew as time went on. But yeah, it looks like post-World War II growth, there was an increase in interest in social services, public health, led to a surge in nonprofit organizations, with board of directors playing active roles in fundraising, strategic planning, and community outreach. What else here? It looks like more recently, everything, all of the environmental stuff. It mentions diversity and inclusion initiatives from 2000 to present, the digital age. I know my sister started a nonprofit in Haiti, doing some stuff there, and all of that. I feel like as we become more connected as a society, it's easier to find a cause. It's easier to make. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about not like our community and impacting our community, but you could start a nonprofit organization that helps the whole world, right here in Fergus Falls. So it's really interesting.
And we have some, yeah.
So I am curious as to like what is the structure. Maybe you can rattle off a list of all of these nonprofits. Like how many are there?
In Fergus
that
Falls.
have boards of directors. Every nonprofit is required to have a board of directors by their 501c3c or whatever that is, right?
501c3.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly correct. And that is the IRS definition, right? Because if you're gonna be tax exempt, you've got to follow some certain guidelines. So nonprofits are pretty regulated as far as, are you meeting these standards to continue to retain your tax exempt status, and part of kind of the reason for that being that they're not making a profit. And I think there's a little bit of and bring me back around if this is too kind of veering off of where you're wanting to go with this, but I think some of where the kind of misconception of what a board is or board does starts with a misconception of what nonprofits are. A lot of people think like, oh, they can't make money. Oh, it's just for charity, right? But like you're saying, really any interest you have. I've seen nonprofits obviously dedicated to all kinds of art forms, nonprofits dedicated to outreach. I've seen or helping in foreign nations. Nonprofits dedicated to pickleball, like actually like sports and stuff. Well, and a lot of our sporting teams, our youth sporting teams and such in Fergus Falls are nonprofits. The Hockey Association, the Soccer Association, those are nonprofits. And so it isn't necessarily that nonprofits can't make money, it's that they can't turn a profit. So any income that they receive has to go back towards their mission. And that can include overhead. So as a nonprofit employee, obviously I get paid. I am not a tax exempt employee though. So what I get paid on does still get taxed and everything. Only the organization as a whole is exempt from those taxes.
So if you work for a nonprofit, you still have to pay your taxes.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. So, and I'm counted then as part of that overhead cost, right? What it takes to keep the organization running.
And this is where it gets really interesting because there's a lot of other nonprofits, like politicians will start nonprofits. Big businesses will spin off and start nonprofits, and sometimes there's huge salaries for people that are tied to nonprofit organizations as a way to circumnavigate paying taxes.
That's true. And I'm not going to go into that because I don't think that's necessarily a problem here in Fergus Falls. But but yes, there is definitely ways in which, well, and I think we can say that for any industry, though, a lot of those who wish to be unscrupulous will find ways to do so. And I think that's going to happen in whatever industry and with whatever loopholes they can.
But go back to that kind of talking about those local nonprofits, kind of what it is and what does that mean to be on the board then?
Yeah.
Because obviously the Bicycle Alliance, right? The Pedestrian and Bicycle Alliance, that is a board of directors. I mean, if you have a passion for something, there's probably a way to be involved in that in some way.
Absolutely. And it's kind of one of those things where you can pick your topic. So in Fergus Falls, we have about 100 nonprofits, which if you just stop and think about it, if there's 100 nonprofits and each one of those has to have at minimum 3 board members, that's already 300 spots we need to have volunteers fill. And I'll say that's the other kind of difference then between a nonprofit and a traditional for-profit business is that in a for-profit business, if you have shareholders or stakeholders or a board of directors, they're often the people who are getting the profits back from the business. With the nonprofit, again, they can make money, but all of that then goes and turns right back around into the mission of the organization. So I think that's the first thing is that pretty much always a nonprofit board member is a volunteer position.
Pretty much always.
Pretty much always. I say pretty much always just because the rules are not necessarily, it depends on each organization's bylaws, which they have to establish when they, again, are forming and getting their nonprofit status with both the IRS and the Minnesota Secretary of State. On occasion, there might be a board that will give their board members stipends for their time, small stipends. Usually it's $50 per meeting or something like that. But you still have to offer and volunteer and stuff too. So it's generally almost always a voluntary, non-paid position. And the time and what that looks like then is if you have a desire to be on a board and you find an organization that meets your interest. Here in Fergus, for instance, like I said, we've got the sports organizations. Almost all of those have boards. We've got the arts organizations, CADITS, Center for the Arts, Lake Region Arts Council. All of them are nonprofits and have boards. We've got the cemeteries, a lot of the cemeteries in the area. You wouldn't think, oh, I want to be on the cemetery board, but a lot of the ones that are independent, not attached to a church or anything, have boards and are looking for people to help kind of run and take care of the business of the cemetery. So it's kind of, pardon.
Sorry, I'll let you clear your throat there. Yep. Any idea? They always talk about the average age of an electrician is almost at retirement or something. Any idea of what the average age of somebody that serves on a board in Fergus Falls is?
I would say probably that I'm bad at guessing, but I would say generally people who are retired tend to have the most time to serve on a board. And I think part of that is, well, when you're retired, you're a little more flexible. But I do think that's another common misconception, is that boards take up all of your time. And so you have to be retired to have the time to serve on a board. And I really think that that's not true. There are absolutely boards that can demand quite a bit of time. But there's also boards where it's like 1 hour once a quarter, like once every 3 months. You go to your meeting and maybe read some material ahead of time. And so 2 hours every 3 months is really not that much of a time commitment, in my opinion. But
I guess, do you want to list some more of those, or like, are there this FergusFallsBoards.com has openings on it right now? I'm sure there's got to be some organizations that are probably struggling more than others to fill spots at times, huh?
yeah, and part of what I am in the process of, I'm at the point where I'm launching this out to the public, but I am also still trying to get nonprofits to come in and give me their board openings to have on this site. But for instance, some of the ones I have right now, the Fergus Falls 544 Education Foundation, Friends of the Fergus Falls Public Library, Otter Cove, Saga Youth, Someplace Safe, the Welcome House, all organizations who have put their postings on this website to help facilitate looking for new board
How
members.
old is the website?
Let's see. I finished it in like June.
Okay.
So it's really new.
Just starting. And I should have gone on it. But is there like, can you go on there and just fill out a form to upload your nonprofit's information?
Absolutely.
It's like no one has to deal with you. Everything can be done. They can start a profile. They can manage listings. They can do all that stuff from just going on the website.
Just going on the website and filling out a form. And then any person who's looking to join a board, you go on, you scroll through the list. It's got all the little logos and stuff on there. Just tapping on whatever organization, it'll give you their organization mission, how many board vacancies they have open, what the time commitment is. That's part of the form that the nonprofit fills out, is how much time will it take for someone for a month serving on a board. And then how to apply, and the organization's website. So each organization does have their own like way to apply, whether it's an actual application or, hey, just email this person or whatever. So you can find all of that for each organization on this website.
Are most of those like once a month meetings?
Typically, yeah. I would say the most common is even probably like 10 meetings a year. A lot of organizations tend to kind of give 1 month sometime in the summer and then usually take December off.
Gotcha.
So I would say a good rule of thumb is you can expect someone looking to serve on a board can expect to probably go to maybe about 4 to 10 meetings a year, just depending. A lot of these organizations are adapting post-COVID to be hybrid or even happen completely over Zoom, depending on how far people live and the area they serve and such. So I know a board that I sit on right now, I pretty much always join via Zoom. But my husband's on the library board, and he just pops over to the library once a month. So it really, and that's just an hour. And like, we've got kids and stuff. It can be, and that was one of the things that was like, oh, do we have time for this? But when you make the time for it, from where I'm sitting, it can definitely be doable.
So what kind of, and again, each nonprofit's going to have different bylaws, but is there like a kind of like a general standard for what kind of responsibilities come along with that? I mean, you're going to have probably power to appoint, hire new directors, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it again, depends very much on the organization. You mentioned earlier that A really good board of directors sometimes then supports like the majority of the work. A lot of these nonprofits don't necessarily have a full-time employee or maybe even a part-time employee.
Right.
It might solely be volunteer run. Other
Yeah.
times it is a matter of, okay, our organization is grown enough to the point where we are looking to hire someone, a staff person. And in that case, what might happen is it might be a full board decision getting to go through that hiring process. It might be that a committee is made of however many board members, and they kind of take the lead on that. So within those parameters, as long as you're working within your bylaws, really it depends a lot on what the organization is structured to do, where your funding is coming from, and how you choose to run your business.
Gotcha. So, what like key things, obviously, besides the arts industry is supported? I don't want to say the arts industry is a nonprofit industry, but it kind of is a nonprofit industry. We wouldn't have it without support, without nonprofits, without probably grant funding, figuring out how to make all that work. But like, what other sports, all the area sports? I mean, there is very much so key infrastructure and key activities that we're not going to have if people don't step up to do this stuff. That's the facts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of them, a good example, and to my knowledge, people thankfully have stepped up, but here in Fergus Falls, we have the wonderful Over the River Festival.
Yeah.
That has been happening every December now for many years. And one of the things I was excited when I moved back to the area, it started while I had been gone. And when I moved back, my parents were so excited to bring me out to that. And it was just magical, the Christmas tree lighting and the fireworks. And it's like, wow, this is like stepping into a Hallmark movie. Like, it's just absolutely one of the bright points in the dreary Minnesota winters. And that was at danger this year, got a little bit in danger. And I can't say that I know the story behind it. I just saw the Facebook post that they were looking for people to kind of step up and take it over. But I would...
Was it the Riverfront Council?
Yeah.
That disbanded?
Yeah, I think so.
There was a council that disbanded that was in charge of operating.
And they were a
the event.
nonprofit. Yep, they were a nonprofit group, and yeah, exactly. And what I saw was that they had disbanded, and they were looking for people to step up and take it over. And to my knowledge, it sounds like some of it, I hope, is still going on. So
I know it's one of Outstate's. It's one of their busy points in the winter. It's really, really cool to just have everybody down by the river, and it's a great day for Fergus Falls, and like we have that sort of stuff because people step up and do it. So whoever stepped up to save Over the River, bless your heart.
Thank you.
Somebody's putting in a lot of work. Somebody is putting in a lot of work, and we don't even know who it is. So it's truly thankless work. I mean, this is a lot of just super thankless work that people put in. You oppose that?
I'm going to oppose that a little bit because I think that it... Let me say this. I don't think it gets thanked enough, but I'll tell you, the feeling of seeing something that you've put so much work into come to fruition is really just a wonderful one. So I think we definitely need more thanking to be happening, and more recognition of these wonderful volunteers who really are making these things run in Fergus Falls. But I would hope it's not completely thankless. I do think some of it is the completion and seeing what an impact that has on the community, because that's when it boils it down to it. And that's why I'm doing this too, is really because I love this community. And when we get involved in this civic manner, when we engage civically, it really does create those moments of community magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Future outlook, any are there any technological disruptors? Is AI affect the board of directors, the nonprofit world at all?
That's a great question. Across the nonprofit industry, we're all kind of taking a look at AI. Right now, I've seen it mostly from an employee standpoint as ways in which we can integrate it to make our processes better and streamline. I know there's definitely concern about some biases that it might have too in the work, especially coming from a funder perspective. We want to make sure we're not relying too much on AI.
Right.
Just because of the training models, we don't know where they're coming from. But
and more so, I think it changed the grant game. I mean, you were in that position with Lakes Region Arts Council when ChatGPT was invented, and you saw it. I can only imagine you saw an increase in the quality of grant applications with this technology.
I started actually encouraging people. I went to my board there, and we discussed it and wanted to know, is this something that we want to have an opinion on? Do we want to, because AI generated art, which is a whole nother can of worms, but that's something we needed to think about as well. And ultimately, at the time, it was decided that we're gonna they were gonna let it play out and see where it goes. But I started encouraging people like, hey, if you aren't necessarily someone who feels that you're the best grant writer, or that has someone to do this professionally or full time, or you are one of those organizations that is primarily or solely run of volunteers and you don't have 2 hours to sit down and write a grant application, like use your tools, use ChatGPT. Like especially in the granting world, a lot of the questions are very similar across the board, and I am fully on board at this point in time. We'll see how things continue to evolve, but I think it's can be a really great tool.
And I think on a review, like reviewing grants as well, that is going to grow with technology, and AI will undoubtedly be able to review a grant and tell you probably if it's original thought, or give you an analysis of how much of that grant was produced using artificial intelligence, how much of that was likely original thought, how much of that was not. All of that stuff is already out there as far as that goes. So
right, yeah. and then whether or not we care, like
whether or not it matters, whether or not we care, because I think at the end of the day, people want information delivered to them in a clean package in an efficient way.
And if you can use a tool to make that happen, like at the end of the day, again, coming from the arts industry, like at the end of the day, if your artist is going to be carrying out the work and using their two hands to do that, if you use a computer to write your grant on the front end to get you there, more to you.
Right. Especially in the arts world, like your art is what is going to support that grant. It's not going to be what the grant says. I mean, you got to meet this many characters, fill out the form, do the thing, fill out the form, but your art is going to be what they're reviewing and what they're granting funds on. So, and a lot of artists are not, they're artists, they're not like form fillers or,
exactly. So I think it really is a way to open up that field and continue.
Let more people who normally wouldn't maybe want to go through the process or have a really cool skill or art, but would never want to sit down to write a grant. That's a cumbersome process. So if more people could have access to that, I think that's for the better.
Yeah, by all means. And that's something that we're, from a funder perspective, also always looking at is ways that we can kind of take that elitism out of the grant making process and simplify and try to cut back to only what we need. And there's still ways to go and differing opinions and such, but really trying to keep ahead of the curve and make it accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
Whether they're a writer or not.
I like that. All right. I am going to get into kind of the closing section of the show. I'm going to get a couple questions here to wrap it up, but biggest surprise, I guess, in your life in these nonprofit organizations, what surprised you the most about looking into, board of director openings, this website? Like, what surprised you through the process?
Yeah, I think just from the get-go, still those numbers, like I'll circle back to that again. 1 in 14 people. Like, you think about how many people you know. Like, if you can name 14 of your friends, do you know whether or not one of them is on a board? Like,
Right.
So I think the biggest surprise is just really how many people we actually need to sustain these organizations and these wonderful things that they're doing. And there is always a need. And I think another thing that might have surprised me too is how really easy it can be to get involved. It really is not some stuffy up in a tower group of people who are trying to gatekeep who can join or whatever. It's not a secret. It's not a mystery. Really, anyone can be on a board. You just have to, a lot of the time, show up and be willing to be engaged.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I know that throughout the process of running for city council, lots of people approached me to get involved, get on a board, do something. It's like, I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to do something. Now my phone will probably ring a lot more that people heard me say that, but I will have to do something. And I do think that whether it's for a short period of time, or I don't know if those are annual commitments, 2-year commitments, they probably all change.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably walk away anytime you want. No one's going to break your kneecaps. But
well, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's important to get involved in general. So this is one of my favorite questions to ask people. Best business advice. This is a segment sponsored by Liberty Business Systems here, but I want to hear your best business advice.
Yeah, I think I have a favorite quote when it comes to the work that I engage in. It was Senator Paul Wellstone once said, "We all do better when we all do better." And so keeping that in mind as I'm approaching nonprofit work or board openings or business in general, if the decisions we are making are helping people do better, then we're going to do better. So I think would be my business advice.
Yeah. Help your customers, help your employees, and everybody will do better in that. So awesome. Well, anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to talk about today with your project, or anything else you want people to know?
I guess I would just encourage anyone listening who is part of a board or involved in that to, if you aren't listed on the website already and you're looking for board members, or even if you're not looking for board members right now, but you want the citizens of Fergus Falls to know that you're here in the area, please sign up for the board openings website. You can do that right there at www.fergusfallsboards.com. And I do have some swag that I'll be leaving in various places around town. So it's the teal and orange in a little window, Fergus Falls area board openings. There are some pass-along cards and some stickers and some pins. So
Are you on Facebook?
I'm not on Facebook yet.
But share this on Facebook. That's a good way to help out, even if you don't want to join one of these board positions. If you're listening to this interview, hop on, type up the link, fergusfallsboards.com, and share it on a Facebook page or in a Facebook group somewhere. and let people know that there's ways to get involved. So, Miranda, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jacob.
I really appreciate it. I look forward to whatever comes up next. This pickleball junkie from Outstate, so good. Definitely get out there and check out those Uncommon Cream Ales. So yeah, shout out, thank you Outstate, Atlas Outdoor Services, Stumbinos, Victor Lundeen's, Liberty Business Systems, Wayne Schuett with Century 21, and of course Fergus Home and Hardware. So have a good day, everybody.